We welcome next Suki Sandhu, the CEO and founder of Odeless and Involve. Suki is one of the leading specialists in sourcing exceptional, diverse talent and growing it, and has been a game changer for almost 20 years. And he was awarded an OBE from the Queen. Welcome, Suki.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Suki, it's great to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Very good. I brought the Queen with me behind me. You know, as a real guest.
I'm a little bit concerned. I expect the Scotland Yard to come in there and like take you. I think you're kidnapping the Queen is very high risk.
She's like my guardian angel. She's been with me for years.
Suki, let's get right into the meat of the conversation. Which consumer behavior shifts will be key to driving growth in 2021, or what are the opportunities that you're seeing from your different purviews?
Yeah, it's interesting. So 2020 has been a really tough year for everyone. I think everyone is just waiting to get to the holiday break. And I think what we've learned this year that we've had two pandemics to deal with. We've had the pandemic with COVID, and then the pandemic of racism with Black Lives Matter and the protests. And I think it's been an awakening year for everyone. So I think 2021 is definitely going to be about taking action and being held accountable for your actions. And it's the consumers or employees who are going to make this action happen. So for me, learning was this year. Next year is about seeing action and seeing brands actually taking action on diversity and inclusion.
How much do you think the consumer are keyboard warriors? This is really, I was really excited that you were going to be part of this because I wanted to tap into your brain on this one. When I say keyboard warriors, I mean, they pontificate on social media of what they're going to do to Hershey's if they don't do but then their actions in reality, I think back to BP having the big oil spill, or Exxon, or Tylenol, Perrier. There's a lot of history in consumer behavior of voicing things, but then not acting on them. Is that something that you are thinking about, seeing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary, I think what you're talking about is about being an inclusive brand. And being an inclusive brand is about being authentic. So for instance, your CEO can't make a grand statement about supporting BLM if they have no Black representation in the leadership team or the board.
That's
so
right.
If you think of somewhere like Adidas, for instance, who have built a lot of their brand success on African-American sports stars, yet less than 5% of the US employees are Black. And they were called out really strongly for that in the wake of BLM.
And so to me, the question is, does that have we seen the indication that is affecting their business? Because that's what I've been interested about. There's the reverse of it. We've seen so much canceling on both sides of the political spectrum. And then when you look under the hood, you're not seeing the mapping yet. I do think, you're seeing, it's actually stunning to me how little you're seeing on the mapping for how much people are talking. And it goes back to words are cheap. And I was curious if you had any insights or historical references or intuitions or points of view on that phenomenon.
Yeah, because if you think about
it, the Yeezys are selling out.
Yeah, no, but I would say that when companies, consumers, I suppose, are boycotting brands, so they're not buying the product, it's not just about the revenues. It's about the other impact it has on the reputation, on their ability to attract talent, and obviously their ability to retain them. Because consumers are also their employees. So whatever consumers are thinking, I don't think businesses can really avoid what's happening in the market in terms of responding to BLM, thinking about representation in their own business, or things like companies being accused of pink washing, where they add the rainbow brand to their brand for Pride Month, but then they might not have policies that protect LGBT employees, such as trans inclusion or same-sex benefits. I mean, shockingly, in the US, for instance, there are still 15 states where you can legally be allowed to fire someone for being LGBT+, which I think is outrageous. So I think actually employees and the activism that we're seeing in the market is they're not afraid of holding CEOs and leadership teams accountable. And they do boycott brands. Even something like Dolce & Gabbana, for instance, where
I remember
a few years ago where they said, gay couples having babies via IVF were synthetic.
Yep.
I mean, I personally will never buy anything from that brand. And actually, their sales did plummet after that. I'd rather buy it Burberry.
So growing up as a kid, what kind of activities did brands do to capture your attention? And then as a grown up, what kind of thing? So juxtaposition that. Like, what do you think you were drawn to from age 1 to 20, if you rewind your personal consumer behavior, and what have you been attracted to, or what do you look for, what catches your eye? Obviously, you and I are spending some time up here in a very serious and important conversation up here, but even going down to the lightest things of like color schemes or placement or social media content or digital TV. When you hear that question, how do you think?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because when I grew up in a very strict Indian household. So my dad came to the UK when he was 6 in the 60s. So I would say I didn't really have any perception of brands. If anything, like being a working class family, it was about kind of saving every penny that you could. And it was very much a culture of saving rather than spending. More
utility, right? Food, clothes, utility. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then obviously, as I started to earn in my early 20s and working, obviously that's when I wanted to spend. But being a working class boy, like buying even designer clothes, I buy it in the sale because I feel like I've got my parents at each shoulder telling me, don't you dare buy that new season blazer from Burberry. So I think and now I've moved into an era where I've just turned 40. And this year I promised to be more sustainable. I was thinking I didn't need to buy lots of clothes because I have a great wardrobe. And then when you're seeing brands like Patagonia, for instance, where, you know, they did a campaign just for Black Friday recently about don't buy this jacket, because they were trying to get consumers to consider purchases and the environmental impact and championing sustainability. So for me, like, I feel like that for me, it's about trying to save the planet. And I think a lot of consumers think in that way too.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly so much evolution. The most interesting thing about consumers is they never stay put. It's always moving. What about communication portals? What do you think the opportunities are in 2021 from platforms? How should they be thinking about platforms? You know, whether it's digital, whether it's traditional. You know, you've brought up Burberry a couple of times. You know, and the blazer. You know, the fashion industry, runway show. Like, what are you feeling in the general marketing sphere is opportunistic in 2021?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I was nodding furiously when Deborah mentioned LinkedIn.
Yes.
And being one, and it's definitely my favorite platform. And I feel like it's one where it's grown massively over the last 5 years alone. I feel like it's underutilized because it's certainly a great marketing tool. If you think about professionals that have disposable income, I'm amazed that brands don't use it more to try and like sell their products. So I'm available for paid partnerships with Burberry if they want me to. Like, seriously, I'm there. Like, I'm the biggest fan. But it's interesting, you don't see it used as much. And I think that is something that will change because they're talking to people that have spare cash, like business people that have got jobs and they're earning.
You know, back to the bigger point you're making, you feel like if Burberry takes a substantial social misstep, that you'll have the tear go down your eye because you love the product so much, but where you are at 40 years young, because you look insane, by the way. You look like my son and I'm 45. You know, do you feel like you have a little bit of that tear in your eye, but you're at that place in your life's journey where that is the primary and you'll have to go to a different brand?
Well, no, well, actually a really good example, because we talk negatively about brands, but Burberry is actually a really good example where a few years ago, Christopher Bailey, who was the CEO, openly gay CEO, 100, the only one, he dedicated his last collection to the queer community, and he had the rainbow going through lots of the different people, all of you, exactly. And that brought a tear to my eye because he overlooked the commercial implications of supporting the queer community, given where they sell their product: Middle East, Russia, China. He didn't care about the implications it would have for sales. For him, it was about supporting the queer community, being visible, and then also donating a percentage of those profits to charities that actually need it and support LGBT plus youth. For me, that's activism. That's being visible.
But when you're a company and the fashion textile industry, as you know, has data against what it does to the environment, you know, if your best friend is skewing extremely passionate environment, you know, I have friends who just don't buy designer because their biggest issue is textiles in, you know, gas and others, obvious, but this industry is doing an enormous amount of damage. The real interesting question for me over the next 20 years, as consumers become so awake, is will businesses always have some vulnerability and then people are choosing and picking like we do in every issue?
But this textiles piece is around sustainability, and it's not just luxury; it's also fast fashion.
I agree.
There was a huge scandal in the UK about Boohoo, who was selling their clothes for like 99 pence. Like, if you think about taking that through the supply chain, how much are those people in Asia being paid to produce these products? It's outrageous.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is the interesting thing where although we'll have a big scandal about it, people will still buy it in their pounds, like buying all these products. And it's just confusing what consumers will do and what they won't.
I think that's an incredible way to end it. Suki, thank you so much for your expertise.
Great to meet you.
Such a pleasure.